The assassination of Charlie Kirk is bringing the conversation around political violence to the forefront. We'll hear from a political expert on the history of radical political violence. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. Political violence becoming a major talking point this week following the assassination of right-wing political commentator Charlie Kirk.
Kirk, who routinely debated with students on college campuses and was a major supporter of President Trump, was killed in a targeted incident while speaking on a campus at the Utah Valley University.
Federal police investigating Kirk's assassination announcing this Friday that they had arrested a suspect. That suspect identified as Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old from Utah. According to the Associated Press, Robinson indicated to a family friend he was connected to the shooting. FBI Director Kash Patel says the suspect was taken into custody at 10 p.m. local time Thursday night, more than 12 hours after the Bureau released the first photos of the suspect.
Governor Kathy Hochul reacting to the shooting, saying in a post on X she was, quote, horrified and that political violence has, quote, no place in the nation.
New York representatives in Washington also renouncing the political violence.
Violence, which affects so many different people of so many different political persuasions, is an affliction of America. And coming together is what we ought to be doing, not pointing fingers of blame.
This moment requires leadership that brings the American people together as opposed to trying to further divide us. Political violence in any form against any American is unacceptable.
It is also important to note here there have been several instances of political violence against Democrats this past year. Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman was shot in her home. Also, the home of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro was firebombed. Also in 2022, Paul Pelosi, the husband of former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, was attacked by a man in their home.
President Trump also responding to Charlie Kirk's assassination, announcing he'll award Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Earlier in the week, the president calling Kirk a, quote, martyr and celebrating the impact he had on political discourse.
He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth.
The president went on to call out the dangers of demonizing political opponents while calling out what he described as, quote, radical left political violence.
Violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now.
Joining me now to give additional insight on the history and context of political violence is Grant Reher. He's a political science professor at the Maxwell School at Syracuse University. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to try to help.
So it sounds like there's been an increase in political violence. Would you say that is the case?
Oh, yeah, I think that's without doubt. The data on this shows that in recent years, political violence has ticked up. Not only the frequency, but the level of deadliness of it. And so it's clear we're this shooting of Charlie Kirk is part of a trend.
And what are some signs people should watch out for? Do you think that this is something that's going to keep continuing?
Yeah, that's always hard to say, but my hunch is that it will, because I think the forces behind this are both quite historical recently and then have been exacerbated in more recent years. So first of all, we've got political polarization, which is the deep divide between the two parties. That's something that has been 40 or 50 years in the making and has been trending up for decades. But the period since Donald Trump first ran for president in 2016, we've seen that polarization get even deeper. And so that has increased the heat and the level of emotion, the intensity of all the political rhetoric, and a lot of the antagonisms. And then you add to that the social media environment. And then once these events start happening, other people see them and they may be more inclined to partake in them. And so when you have a situation where you get this level of intensity of heat and vitriol, you have folks who are very extreme or mentally unstable who can get activated to actually act on some of the things that they may in prior decades or years only thought about doing.
Do you think there's anything that can be done from lawmakers and elected officials, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side, that can try to stop some of this violence?
No, definitely. They need to turn down the heat, and they need to stop demonizing each other, and they need to stop attributing the worst possible motives to every single initiative or every single action that's taken. And that's happening on both sides now. Originally, if we were to go back to, say, 2016, when this really started to take off, I would have probably blamed Trump and the right more for this. But at this point, it's essentially a free-for-all. And I think we just need to lower the overall volume and intensity of some of the things that are going back and forth.
Now, the Charlie Kirk incident happened on a college campus. Do you expect college campuses to increase security when it comes to speaking events? Is there anything you think that colleges are going to be doing to stop this violence?
Unfortunately, I think the main thing they're going to be doing is not having these events. I think they're going to just shy away from having the events entirely, because you can't have a university can't be expected to have the level of security that would, say, protect a president of the United States or a presidential candidate. And this shooting sort of took that form. It was someone who knew what they were doing with, I haven't seen what the nature of the rifle is, but what I understand is it's a pretty serious target rifle. And that's the kind of thing that, you need a Secret Service and you need a SWAT team to be guarding against. So I think universities, the easiest thing for them to do is just opt out. And so that's what I would expect would happen.
Is there any message that you have for New Yorkers who are watching this, and anything that you would like to share that I didn't ask?
Well, yeah, I would say, like, going back to what I said before, think twice before you demonize someone politically. And also, I think we need to change our set of expectations about violence. There's one thing I didn't mention before, if I could squeeze it in, but there was a poll conducted a couple of years ago. And the question was, is assassination legitimate if against a politician that's perceived to be dangerous to the country or to democracy? And the really disturbing finding was that the acceptance rate, the approval agreement rate with that statement was up around 35–40% for people on both sides of the aisle who were under 50. Older people like myself, were much more disapproving of it. But that's a concern if our younger population thinks that this is okay.
All right, we'll have to leave it right there. Professor Grant Rear, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate your time.
Happy to try to help. Thanks for having me.
Students are now back in school, with districts around the state implementing that bell-to-bell cell phone ban. When we return here from New York, United Teachers Union about what teachers are experiencing as this ban is put in place and how they're responding to parents' concerns about safety. If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. As schools return for the fall, officials with the state reporting that many schools are taking steps needed to implement the governor's bell-to-bell cell phone ban.
The state launching a site that parents can check the latest information from on schools and their cell phone ban policies. I
caught up with Linda Person, the president of NYSIT, the New York State United Teachers, asking how teachers and the kids are reacting to the ban. So you had a bit of a ramp up to get here. It wasn't like they just sprang this on everybody a month ago. How did it go in terms of getting everybody ready for this September?
Well, there were districts throughout the state that held information sessions for parents and for educators over the summer as they were putting their specific policies together. And almost every district in the state was up and running with a policy in place for the start of the school year. So, so far we are hearing really good reports about how it's going so far.
And for those who only kind of looked at this at a glance, this wasn't an option, right? They had to come up with a plan, and they had to figure out a way to get those cell phones out of the kids' hands, right?
Yes, the state law that passed this past legislative session required every district in the state to come up with a policy for district provided storage of cell phones and other internet enabled technology throughout the day. So there was a lot of local discretion in terms of how they created their policies and where the phones were going to go during the school day, but every school was a distraction-free learning zone.
And I know I talked to somebody who has their kids in one school locally up and around the capital region. They said that their kids were given an option of either locked in the locker all day or the yonder bag. Is that kind of what you're seeing, that the kids, even within that school, they have a couple of options, or is it generally just like one thing they're doing?
Usually there's the same mechanism across a school building. So sometimes there are differences across middle school versus high school and elementary school. But generally speaking, you would expect that all the kids in one building are following the same policy.
And there was a carve out for some exceptions, right, for certain children, whether it's a medical thing or even maybe an emotional anxiety thing. And I'm sure there's some mechanism where some kids, if they really needed to have the phone, they were allowed to have the phone, at least on them,
Yes.
if not in their hand.
Yeah, there are a number of exceptions for medical needs, including some kids monitor their insulin levels and blood glucose with their phone. Others use their phone for translation services. Others are specifically using the phone for an instructional purpose. So a teacher is using them as part of class instruction. So there are a lot of instructional options built into the policy so that districts can have that flexibility.
For old fogies like me, and I've heard it from people my age, they say, you know, they didn't need a law. You just got to have the teachers enforce this. Say, put your phone away, or I'll send you to the principal's office. And they could have done it that way. Where's the disconnect? What are we not understanding? That especially with AI and other things, and with Google, it was becoming an issue as well for teachers, right, in terms of being able to teach?
Yeah, our educators report that they were losing between 10 and 20% of their instructional time each class to trying to enforce keeping those phones away and keeping kids focused on the whole reason that they're there in school, which is to learn. So this specific district-wide and building-wide policy is going to help create this a learning environment for 7 hours a day where kids can focus on not just learning, but also the human connection and the other skills that we learn while we are out in the world being with other people. So we're excited to give kids these 7 hours a day so they can have a bit of their childhood back.
You know, there's nothing sadder, this is my opinion, when you go out to dinner with your spouse and you look at another table and you see a couple and they both have their heads down looking at phones, scrolling, not talking to each other. I'm guessing teachers must have felt that way with the kids. You're talking about the connection where, you know, especially even lunchtime, where you go and look down a table and everybody's on their phones and no one's laughing and joking and talking to each other.
Yeah, and it's not the kids' fault. Our phones are specifically designed to be addictive. And so when kids are, you know, paying attention to their phone or the phone is buzzing in their pocket, it can be a real distraction. And so by putting it away in a pouch or in a locker, you create this space for connection, for learning that wasn't there before. And now we can create a little space to bring that back to our schools.
Are you getting much pushback from some parents? I always think of it, especially the timing. The timing's never good ever for a school shooting, but you had the one recently at the Catholic Church, and I think I could see some parents watching that news saying, you know what, this is why I want my kid to have a phone, because if something happens, I want to be able to reach them. Do those things impact this, and do you get any pushback, especially with the issue of school security, school shootings, that kind of thing?
Yes, and as a parent myself, I have 4 kids in the public schools here in the Capital Region. This is something that concerns me as well, and it's something that every parent worries about when they send their kid off to school on the bus in the morning. But what really convinced me and solidified our position on this was talking to law enforcement. When you ask your school resource officers or county sheriffs and other police in the region, they will tell you that your kid is far more safe without that phone. And that is the ultimate goal here, to keep our kids safe. So we're going to follow their lead and follow their advice on this issue.
And are all the schools, as far as you know, from UNICEF, are they all like on board? Like there's no school district holding out, suing Kathy Hochul or anything? It's people are kind of on board with this?
There are a few districts that are not necessarily following the policy exactly as described by the law, but for the most part, I would say 99% of districts are on board. All
right, we'll have to leave it there. Melinda Person, welcome back to the new school year, and thank you for coming on Empire State Weekly. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Getting a COVID vaccine just got easier.
The governor signing an executive order to make that happen. When we return, I talked to a lawmaker about some of the other changes they'd like to see happen when it comes to vaccines.
By the way, if you have a comment or story idea, let us know about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. We're also on X at WTEN. Welcome back. New York has updated its COVID vaccine standing orders. Pharmacists are now able to administer Pfizer and Moderna shots for most New Yorkers, thanks to an executive order from the governor.
I caught up with one lawmaker who wants to bring more changes to vaccine laws in the state. New York pharmacists have gotten clearance by the state to administer Pfizer's COVID vaccine for people ages 5 and older. This follows an executive order signed by Governor Hochul last week and a previous standing order allowing pharmacists to give the Moderna vaccine to those ages 3 and up. When it comes to insurance coverage, DOH issued a statement saying, quote, individuals are encouraged to reach out to their insurance providers to confirm coverage details. We are evaluating longer-term coverage solutions while ensuring immediate access through pharmacies. Amid conflicting vaccine guidance at the federal level, State Senator Michelle Hinchey recently introduced a bill called the Vaccine Integrity Act. She says instead of only taking guidance from the federal government, New York could look to 2 state bodies, the Immunization Advisory Council and the 21st Century Disease Elimination Group for all types of vaccines.
Both of those groups are made up of medical professionals, scientists, doctors, and the work group includes some DOH staff. And so the Department of Health, the commissioner, along with the Commissioner of Education, can look to those 2 work groups for vaccine guidance.
If New York joins an interstate compact, Hinchey says that guidance can be looked at too. As for insurance coverage,
it also requires any New York health plan to cover the insurance plans to cover the insurance costs for the vaccines that are recommended from either these 2 organizations or the interstate compact.
New York's legislative session will begin in January. The federal government cutting some $7 billion in funding, which will result in some New Yorkers having to transition away from the Essential Plan. That plan is a health insurance coverage program that covered over 1 million low and middle income residents. The state working to transition some back to the basic health program, but 450,000 people will be uninsured. One official explaining the state is working within the circumstances.
Don't think we have great options given the federal law. But we see this as the best option forward. And the process that we started yesterday is going to be a 10-month process. So we hope to use some of that 10 months to figure out other affordable comprehensive coverage options for that 450,000 individuals. But we know we can't sustain the status quo. We want to preserve coverage for as many as possible.
The state is looking for public comment.
Stick around. Back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Finally, in Empire State Weekly, people around New York and the nation taking time to remember the tragic lives lost and the heroic response in the aftermath of 9/11 terrorist attacks. It's now been 24 years since the attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people.
At a remembrance ceremony at the 9/11 Memorial Plaza in downtown Manhattan, they saw moments of silence bookended by reading of the victims' names out loud, the solemn process lasting hours.
We're going to leave you this week with a look at the sights and sounds from that ceremony. And Jamie and I will see you back here next week.
Alvear,
Cesar Amaranto Alvear,
Tariq Amanullah,
Angela Amaranto,
James M. Amato,
Joseph Amatuccio,
Paul W. Ambrose,
Christopher Charles Amoroso,
Victor Daniel Barbosa,
Christine Jana Barbuto,
Colleen Ann Barkow,
David Michael Barkway,
Matthew Barnes,
Melissa Rose Barnes.